While the world's been preoccupied with a global pandemic, social injustice, and economic upheaval, experts say climate change continues to escalate, and 2020 is on course to be one of the hottest years on record. Dr. Pamela Groth is an assistant professor in the Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences at the University of Mary Washington. Her research involves study of the Central Pacific climate and El Nino Southern Oscillation variability. Dr. Groth, thanks so much for taking some time to join us today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
We've been quite preoccupied, as I said off the top. The first 3 months of the year, though, we're on track to be the second hottest on record. Has that trend continued through the spring and summer months? And just how hot has this summer really been?
Yes, and unfortunately, it really has continued throughout the spring and the summer months. This summer has been really hot around the globe. May, June, July, they have all been the hottest on record or the second or third hottest on record globally. And many locations have experienced their hottest months on record. For example, just my home state in Virginia, July was the hottest month on record. And unfortunately, we probably are going to be at least in the top 5 hottest years on record this year, but I think that's probably being too conservative. And we actually might break the all-time hottest year on record this year, which the hottest year on record is 2016. I should note that 2015 through 2019, so the last 5 years, have all been the hottest years on record. And actually, I find really alarming is that 2016, the year that was the hottest year on record, was an El Nino year. And that naturally warms our global temperature on the given year that it occurs. So to me, it's so alarming that this human signal of this warming for 2020 is perhaps now starting to overshadow these natural variations from these warming events with these El Nino years. And so the scariest years might be the years that we have these El Nino events on top of this human-induced signal. And actually, my research has shown that climate change might even be causing stronger and more intense El Nino events too, as well.
So normally these changes would happen over hundreds of thousands of years.
Yes, it is not, if you look back in the climate record in the past, there have been times in Earth's history where carbon dioxide concentrations have been high, but you have to go back, I believe now about 5 million years to reach the levels of the carbon dioxide that we have in our atmosphere now. And the important part to take into account is the rate of change. It's that blip that it's a spike that we're doing right now. So the rate is unprecedented. We have never seen this rate of change of adding carbon dioxide to our atmosphere in this rate of warming.
So early on in the pandemic, we saw and heard stories of how global lockdowns lowered emissions, but did it have any effect on actually cooling the climate?
And unfortunately, it has not. The climate system doesn't work in the sense of thinking about the improvements of the air pollution that we saw. So you can think about the atmosphere being a bathtub and the faucet coming into the bathtub being the CO2 emission. So sure, during the pandemic, we were burning less fossil fuels, but we just turn that tap down just a little bit. But those fossil fuels are still being emitted and they're still accumulating in that atmosphere. And for carbon dioxide, the time scale is on tens to thousands of years for that cycle to cycle in and out of the atmosphere. So really what we're burning now is here to stay. And so we have to reduce our emissions today if we really want to see that impact. And the thing with the pandemic is those reductions in emissions, they were not from a systematic change. They were just from the behavioral changes of economies being locked down. So as soon as the behavioral changes go back to normal, which we've already seen, those emissions are going to go back to normal. So people have estimated that we will see about a 7% on average reduction of emissions for 2020. And that is on par with what people want to see. So we want to see a reduction of emissions of about 7 to 8% every year until we reach net zero emissions. That will help us stay within this 1.5 degrees Celsius warming that the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change has set for us to reduce those most catastrophic effects from climate change. And so in a sense, it does start to lead us in that right direction. It's that springing board that we can use maybe this momentum. But in order to do that, we actually have to implement systematic changes here on out every year that will continue to reduce those emissions by that 7-8% until we reach those net zero emissions.
As you said, we're seeing an impact on El Nino. We're seeing record temperatures set, wildfires, ice sheets melting. Are there other impacts of climate change we should all be preparing for?
Oh, most definitely. Yeah. So even just this year, we've definitely those wildfires, the extreme risk of wildfires has doubled because of those warmer temperatures and prolonged droughts that those regions are experiencing. Death Valley recorded the highest temperature potentially ever recorded on Earth of 130 degrees Fahrenheit this summer. Siberia in the Arctic, a small town, registered 100 degrees Fahrenheit this summer. So we're going to continue seeing these type of things happen. And generally, things are just become more extreme, more intense. They're going to start happening earlier. They're going to start happening longer. Sea level rising, displacing people, oceans becoming warmer, more acidic, potentially leading us to a brink of another mass extinction, stronger hurricanes stalling along the coast, increasing the rainfall from that, just more intense rainfall from more precipitation to increased frequency and extremes of precipitation to prolonged droughts. So the thing is that we're already experiencing all of this because we're already at 1 degree Celsius warming. We're trying to stay around 1.5 degrees Celsius warming. And as we reach that and continue to go above those impacts, they're just going to get stronger and more intense.
Well, as you said earlier, longer term changes are needed, and the right time to look at those changes is right now. In your experience, is climate change still top of mind for people?
I believe it is. And there have been 2 surveys that have come out since the pandemic, one at the height of the pandemic, and actually one that I just read about this morning from Stanford researchers. And both of those have shown that it is still a top concern for people, even with the pandemic going on, which is good news. I don't personally think that necessarily has translated into a lot of action, unfortunately, because I think just there's so much going on with governments in the United States also dealing with the social injustice issues that, at least at the local level, I feel like the governments are overwhelmed. But the citizens and the environmental groups, they are still out there and advocating. And I think what is really important, why the stakes are so high, is because the policies that are going to come from the recovery of this pandemic, they need to include these green initiative policies because what is included could potentially shape our climate for the future decades.
Well, aside from governments and corporations, you say that it is top of mind for many individuals. What can individual people be doing?
There is a lot that individuals could be doing. One, talk about it. Talk about it with your friends and your family and your communities. The more we talk about it, the more it'll be on even more people's minds. Do your own personal actions to reduce your carbon footprint. People will model what you do. So if you start riding your bike to work, maybe others will be motivated to ride your bike to work. And then get involved with your community. Push your policymakers to commit to renewable energy and then make them follow through with it.
Well, it's definitely an eye-opener for those who perceive climate change as something in the distant future and clearly evidence we need to accelerate climate action worldwide. Dr. Grove, thank you so much for taking some time with us with NewsPoint today.
Of course. Thank you very much for having me.